Welcome to a journey. A very gentle journey, not rushed, not worried. Simply an adventure that takes your mind through fields now covered in pristine snow and ancient, tranquil villages. Imagine the very first snowflakes gently falling from the silvery grey sky, not too cold, just enough to drape the ground in a pure white cloak, glistening under the faint moonlight or distant starlight. Picture yourself standing at the edge of an old forest, where ancient oak trees stretch towards the sky, their branches mostly bare, leaving only silent, dark silhouettes against the greyish sky, a scene both peaceful and subtly melancholic with the onset of winter. The wind softly rustles the bare branches, creating very faint, whispering sounds, as if nature itself is lulling you to sleep. Night has truly fallen now, and this is the most perfect moment for you to set aside all your worries, every lingering thought from the day, every unfinished task or ambition. Just close your eyes very gently, without any forcing, and let your mind simply wander, like a dry leaf floating on a calm stream, with no particular destination, no haste, just simply drifting with the cool, clear water. Feel the stillness spreading. Around you, a deep silence, undisturbed by any sounds from the outside world. Take a very deep breath now. Feel the relaxation slowly spreading throughout your entire body, from the top of your head, all the way down to your toes. Just relax your shoulders, relax your arms, and let every single muscle rest very deeply, as if they are melting into the soft mattress beneath your back, feeling its firm support. Feel your breathing, becoming very slow and steady. With each inhale, you feel peace filling you. With each exhale, you feel all tension being pushed away, drifting far, far away. This breath is gently guiding you into a state of peace, a peace that you crave after a long, tiring day. Listen to the sound of your own breathing, a truly familiar sound, rhythmic like waves lapping the shore, gentle and continuous, carrying you deeper into stillness, into the soft embrace of sleep. Tonight, we won't just tell a story, but rather, we'll imagine a life together, a life that was full of challenges, full of hardships, but also contained so much meaning, a life that ordinary people lived centuries ago. This is the life of the humble peasants, people from a very long time ago, in the Middle Ages, unsung heroes whose names we may not know, whose specific stories are lost to time, but they bravely faced and overcame the harshest winters, the long and cold nights that seemed to never end. They didn't have modern technology, you know, no warm electric blankets or automatic furnaces, no perfectly insulated sturdy houses, but they possessed an extraordinary resilience, an innate and simple wisdom honed by life and passed down from their ancestors, and most importantly, a strong, unyielding sense of community. Let these very small details, these very vivid images, gently guide you into a very deep and peaceful sleep. Listen to the wind gently whistling through the thatched roofs, a sound that seems like a sigh of the winter night, of a giant creature in slumber. Feel a small warmth from the flickering fire, a warmth that you can almost feel radiating from the screen, through the air, gently touching your skin, chasing away any lingering chill. And just like that, imagine their simple yet determined lives. Let your mind drift over the fields now sleeping under a blanket of white snow, the misty footpaths and the small, rustic homes waiting to welcome you inside, where the warm firelight beckons. You don't need to try to remember every single detail. All knowledge, all information are just golden dust motes sparkling in this quiet space, No need to hold on to them. Just listen to this steady, even narration. A voice as gentle as a stream flowing over smooth pebbles, bringing peace and tranquility. Feel the atmosphere of a distant past, an era where life and death walked hand in hand, yet people still found joy and hope. And just let these stories gently carry you into the world of beautiful dreams, where you can explore wonders without effort. Let your mind rest, be healed by the calm flow of history. Imagine yourself curled up very warmly in a soft blanket, listening to the snow falling softly outside the window, a sound almost imperceptible, yet bringing a strange sense of comfort, like a giant down comforter covering the world. Everything is truly peaceful now. There's nothing to worry about, nothing to rush for. All tension melts away, and you are gradually sinking deeper into your sleep. Each breath becomes longer, deeper, and you feel your body becoming heavier, warmer, and ready for a very good sleep. Now, close your eyes very tightly. No need to open them again, and feel the softness of the pillow beneath your head, the gentle embrace of the blanket covering you, like a warm and soft hug of peace, holding you very lightly. The space around you seems to merge with you, and you feel yourself becoming part of the flow of time, drifting back to a distant past, where everything was simple, authentic, where people lived in harmony with nature. The worries of today have completely vanished. The plans for tomorrow are also set aside, no longer important. Only you remain, and this story gently lulling you into the realm of dreams. Just let your mind float among the images of snow-covered villages, flickering fires in the night, and resilient people living their lives. You are safe, you are protected, and sleep is drawing very near now. Feel the stillness enveloping all your senses. Your heart beats very gently, steadily. Your breath flows in and out softly. All sounds from the outside world seem to recede, fade, and finally vanish completely. You feel yourself floating in a warm, safe, weightless space. Every cell in your body is relaxing, recovering. Let the final images of the snow-covered village, the warm fire, and those resilient people be the last things you think of before sinking into deep sleep. You are slowly feeling your eyelids heavy, your body sinking deeper into the bed, into sleep. All resistance dissolves. Only peace remains. You are sleeping. The wattle and daub home. Architecture of survival as you've sunk deeper into that state of peace, enveloped by the tranquility of Chapter 1. Let your imagination gently lead you to a more specific scene in this distant past. Imagine you're standing before a medieval peasant's home. This isn't a magnificent castle or a grand manor, but a structure both simple and remarkably clever. It was built from the very gifts that nature offered, using earth, wood, and the diligent labor and instinctive wisdom of the people. This house wasn't merely a structure, it was a resilient fortress, a symbol of survival amidst the harsh winter nights. Let's begin with the walls. They weren't solid stone blocks, precisely cut and intricately laid, nor were they vibrant, fired bricks like those we see today. Instead, they were erected using an ancient technique, a building method passed down through thousands of years, known as wattle and daub. Picture this. First, the peasants would gather young branches, often willow oak, or other pliable woody plants, found in abundance along nearby riverbanks and woodlands. These branches were roughly trimmed, stripped of their leaves and unnecessary twigs, then intricately woven together. Imagine them interlaced, forming a giant, handcrafted basket-like framework that became the sturdy skeleton of the wall. These branches weren't just wood. They carried the inherent flexibility and endurance of nature itself, giving the house a degree of resilience against ground tremors or strong winds. This intricate weaving not only created a robust structure, but also excelled at retaining heat, forming thousands of tiny air pockets within its mesh, insulating the wall more effectively than a smooth, flat surface. Following the completion of this wattle framework, the next step involved plastering it thickly with a special mixture, the daub component. This mixture was crafted from readily available natural ingredients, carefully combined to produce a durable and highly insulating building material. The primary ingredient was clay earth dug from the ground, typically sourced from fertile, malleable clay deposits along riverbanks. This clay was then thoroughly mixed with dry straw, golden strands harvested after the autumn fields had yielded their bounty, carrying the scent of sun and soil. Straw didn't just aid in binding the mixture, it created countless minute air pockets within, significantly boosting the wall's insulation, much like a thick, layered coat. In addition, they incorporated wild grasses, dried resilient strands pulled from fields or riverbanks, enhancing the mixture's strength and cohesiveness. And would you believe it? Another extraordinary, though seemingly crude, ingredient was fermented animal dung. Yes, precisely, the waste from livestock like cows, pigs, or horses, meticulously collected and allowed to decompose completely. It might sound unusual, even unhygienic to our modern sensibilities, but it was an incredibly effective insulating material and provided remarkable binding properties to the mixture. Fermented dung helped the mixture achieve a high degree of cohesion, retained moisture well, and once dried, became remarkably hard and durable, almost like stone. It was not only inexpensive and perpetually available on their farms, but also weathered the elements robustly, protecting the house from the searing heat of summer and the bone-chilling cold of winter. Imagine the earthy scent of damp soil and dry straw subtly mingling in the air, blended with a faintly pungent, rustic aroma of fermented animal dung, authentic, characteristic smell of rural life back then, an odor tied to labor and survival. This scent, perhaps initially strange to modern noses, would gradually become familiar, bringing a sense of peace and closeness to nature, almost like the very breath of the house itself, of Mother Earth. As you touch that rough wall, you might feel a slight warmth, more pronounced than the biting cold outside, a warmth retained from the day's heat, held securely within these natural materials. It's a testament to the surprising insulating capabilities of these seemingly simple components. The wall's surface wasn't perfectly smooth. It was uneven, bearing the faint imprints of the plasterer's fingers, or stray straw wisps, each detail narrating the story of the hands that molded it, the drops of sweat that fell upon it. Tiny cracks might appear over time, but these too were promptly patched with the same mud straw mixture, keeping the wall intact and strong. The construction of these homes wasn't a solitary endeavor. It was a collective effort of the entire community, a testament to the peasant spirit of unity. Picture the whole village working together, strong men digging clay from riverbanks, carrying straw from storage, skillful women weaving branches and mixing plaster, and small children joyfully running about, helping with small tasks like carrying water buckets or kneading earth with their feet, their giggles echoing. The hum of conversation, the sounds of laughter filled the air, blending with birdsong and the rustling of leaves in the wind, creating a symphony of life and labor. All of it demonstrated a beautiful spirit of unity and strong bonds among neighbors. Every mud brick, Every strand of straw placed in the wall carried the effort, hope, and even the blessings of a collective for the new home. It was a communal activity where everyone played a vital role, fostering a sense of belonging and security for every villager, a bond of absolute trust. The house wasn't just a dwelling. It was a symbol of cooperation and neighborly love, an unbreakable connection during difficult times, especially when the bitter winter arrived. Daylight, though often faint during the winter months, still managed to filter through tiny gaps or small window openings. You might see minuscule dust motes dancing in that dim light, creating a serene and ancient scene, like a painting slowly coming to life before your eyes, with light streaks dancing on the earthen floor, changing shapes with every passing moment. This light wasn't enough to warm the entire room, but it sufficed to cast ethereal streaks on the earthen floor, like abstract paintings of light and shadow gently moving, drawing peculiar shapes on the damp ground. Every tiny ray of sunlight was cherished, like a promise from the sun that tomorrow would indeed arrive, bringing a hint of warmth and hope, however faint. Sometimes a sunbeam would directly strike an object, like an earthenware pot or a stray piece of straw, making it gleam, creating a small bright spot in the dim space's simple yet meaningful beautiful moment in a hard life where beauty was found in the smallest details. When night fully descended, these small window openings were securely closed, often with crude wooden shutters or thick animal hides tightly fastened with ropes or wooden pegs. The room would then plunge into near darkness, with only the faint glow from the hearth providing lighter, tiny, weak but resilient beacon, defying the encroaching night. That feeling of profound darkness heightened all your other senses. You could hear the wind whistling through the window gaps more clearly, the crackling of wood in the hearth, and you could distinctly feel the small warmth radiating from the center of the house just a few steps away, a warmth you craved in the darkness. This absolute reliance on firelight transformed it from merely a source of illumination into a symbol of life itself, of hope in the thick darkness of winter. Each tiny fire was a fortress against the endless cold outside, a flickering heart amidst the gloomy night, carrying life and protection. Beneath your feet now is a compacted earthen floor. This was a major vulnerability, as cold and dampness would continuously seep up from below, chilling you to the bone, creating a deep, pervasive cold within your body. To combat this brutal and persistent cold, they spread a thick layer of dry straw or reeds across the floor. Imagine the soft sensation underfoot as you move, the gentle rustling sound echoing, creating a familiar backdrop to daily life, like footsteps on dry grass in summer. This straw layer was not just a warm mat, but a crucial insulating barrier, preventing the cold from directly penetrating the body, forming a thin but effective shield between human and the biting cold from the earth. However, this straw layer wasn't a permanent solution. Over time, it would become compacted underfoot, damp from rising ground moisture and daily activities like spilled food or splashed water, gradually decaying and emitting a musty, unpleasant odor. Therefore, periodic straw replacement was a strenuous yet vital task for hygiene and to prevent illness, which easily spread in damp conditions. Picture the whole family together, clearing out the old, compacted, damp straw, and replacing it with fresh, golden bundles, smelling of sun and earth, bringing the scent of the fields indoors. It was manual labor, demanding patience and strength, but it brought immediate comfort, a feeling of cleanliness and dryness. Even if temporary, a small yet valuable improvement for daily life. The fresh straw's gentle fragrance replaced the musty old smells, bringing a refreshing breeze into the living space, a subtle rebirth in the midst of winter. Despite their efforts to maintain hygiene, sometimes tiny residents lived within this straw layer, especially when it grew old and damp. These were fleas hopping on their skin, lice crawling slowly through their hair, or even tiny mice scurrying about, seeking food and warmth beneath the straw. They learned to accept and coexist peacefully with these uninvited guests, considering them a part of rural life, an inescapable reality. The itchiness from flea bites in the middle of the night was an uncomfortable experience, often interrupting sleep, but they grew accustomed to it, viewing it as a minor challenge. Sometimes they used pungent dried herbs like lavender, rosemary, or mint, scattering them among the straw to mask odors and deter insects. Or they might burn a bit of acrid-smelling dry branches to create smoke for pest control, though always very cautiously to avoid fire, a constant lurking danger in a straw-built home. Imagine the feeling of walking barefoot on the biting cold, earthen floor in the early morning. Before the straw layer was spread out, a bone-chilling sensation, yet utterly familiar to them, a stark reminder of winter's harshness, but also a sign that they had survived another long night. You might hear your teeth chattering softly from the cold and quickly reach for crude wooden clogs or rags to wrap your feet. That feeling, though unpleasant, brought with it gratitude for having a straw layer, however simple, to step upon a small comfort amidst the pervasive cold. The interior space of the home was also arranged very simply and functionally. Everything served a single purpose: survival and maximizing warmth. There wasn't much furniture, as every item had to be highly practical. Objects were hung on walls, or neatly placed in corners to create movement space for people and livestock. Imagine crude wooden stools, polished smooth by time, a small oak table in the center where the family gathered for meals, and sturdy, simply carved wooden chests used for storing clothes or dry provisions. All were placed as close to the hearth as possible to maximize the precious warmth radiating, forming a small circle of life where everyone could feel each other's warmth, though the living space was cramped. That was the price for warmth and safety during the cold months. People lived in close proximity, without the concept of privacy we have today. But this very closeness generated physical and emotional warmth and connection. Imagine the feeling of moving in the confined space, sometimes gently bumping into others, but no one complained. Instead, these light touches served as affirmations of presence and bond, a profound understanding. It was an act of quiet concession and mutual empathy, a valuable lesson from a simple life where everyone was an indispensable part of the larger picture of survival, and one person's warmth was another's protection. The steady breathing, the soft snores blended into a symphony of life in the winter night, a comforting sound, gently lulling you into a deep sleep. Life in this earthen home was a lesson in adaptability and gratitude. They learned to cherish every tiny ray of sunlight, every faint wisp of warmth, every act of sharing. It wasn't an easy life, but it forged people into stronger, more resilient beings, teaching them to value the simplest things. As you listen to this story, feel the peace of a simple life lived in harmony with nature, where everything had its meaning and purpose. And just like that, let your mind continue to drift into deep sleep, enveloped by the images of warmth, safety, and the enduring resilience of the medieval peasants. The thatched roof and the drafty openings, as you've settled into the sturdy, comforting warmth of the rough daubed walls, where every straw Every speck of clay tells a story of human resilience and tireless labor. Let your mind drift a little. Higher now. We'll focus on the roof, the final protective layer against the sky's harshness. The roof was covered with thick layers of straw or reeds, meticulously stacked, almost like dragon scales, guarding the house from all dangers from above. Just imagine each bundle of golden dry straw, carefully harvested from the fields after the season's bounty, now tightly bound and layered one upon another, forming a dense, warm blanket. Sometimes there might even be lush green moss or naturally dried moss clinging to it, creating a rustic appearance that perfectly harmonized with the surrounding nature, as if the house were an inseparable part of the very field it stood upon, an organic extension of the earth. From the outside, they looked truly beautiful and peaceful, creating an ancient and tranquil picture. Nestled beneath a blanket of white snow or a thick night, mist a simple beauty, yet remarkably captivating. But did you know this beauty came with considerable challenges, silent battles that these peasants had to face every day, every night throughout the long, unending winter? After many months of persistent rain and heavy snow, the thatched roof inevitably suffered from the wear and tear of time and harsh weather. The straw layers would gradually become compacted, partly decaying from dampness and the rising warmth from inside the house, becoming heavy with absorbed moisture. Rainwater or melted snow would slowly seep through tiny gaps, through every decaying straw strand, dripping steadily down inside the house, forming small puddles on the damp earthen floor, or falling into a wooden basin placed purposefully below. Imagine those tiny water droplets falling with a soft plink, creating a consistent sound, like a lullaby from nature itself, simple, repetitive sound that doesn't cause worry, but merely helps you relax and sink deeper into sleep, amidst the steady patter of rain in the distance. Sometimes, the thatched roof also served as an ideal refuge for uninvited guests who arrived unexpectedly. You might hear the faint scampering of small squirrels on the rafters, the gnawing of mice on the straw strands, or even tiny birds nesting for warmth, creating soft, familiar noises of nocturnal life within the house, like silent companions. Sharing the space, the peasants had to constantly inspect and repair their roofs. Even in the harshest weather, their hands numb with cold and their eyes filled with concern, because a leaking roof could well mean death in that cold winter, as dampness and cold attacked from above. Imagine a man climbing onto the slippery roof, covered in snow or ice, his feet firmly gripping the frozen straw strands, his trembling hands struggling to patch a hole in the biting wind, each bead of sweat mixing with tiny snowflakes. This task demanded not only strength, but also skill, courage, and an unyielding perseverance, for the roof was their final shield against the frigid death. It was a perilous job, especially on blizzard nights, but it could not be postponed. Each time a hole was mended, they would breathe a sigh of relief, knowing they had protected their family for another night. A small, but incredibly meaningful victory. The wind whistling through the straw strands of the roof created very strange sounds in the night. Sometimes it sounded like the whispers of ancient spirits telling tales of winters long past. Sometimes like the cries of winter itself rising, wanting to engulf everything. These sounds, though they might seem eerie, were a part of life, a constant reminder of the wild nature outside, a symphony of winter that you can listen to in your dreams, helping you sink deeper into peace. Occasionally, a sudden strong gust of wind might lift a part of the roof, causing snow to fall inside the house, creating an abrupt chill that demanded immediate repair, even in the thick darkness of night. They would have to leap up, find rags or straw to temporarily plug the gap. Waiting until morning for more thorough repairs, a ceaseless effort. Now, let your attention shift to the windows. Windows, if they existed, were often just small openings, covered with thin animal hide, typically pigskin or cowhide, that had been treated to become translucent, or crude wooden planks, fastened by simple wooden pegs, easy to open and close. Glass was such a luxury that even the lord of the manor rarely possessed it, let alone the humble peasant. Imagine the faint light filtering through the hide during the day, creating ethereal streaks of light on the earthen floor, like abstract paintings of light and shadow gently moving, casting peculiar shapes on the damp ground. Every tiny ray of sunlight was cherished, like a promise from the sun that tomorrow would indeed arrive, bringing a hint of warmth and hope, however faint. Sometimes, a sunbeam would directly strike an object, like an earthenware pot or a stray piece of straw, making it gleam, creating a small bright spot in the dim space. A simple, beautiful moment in a hard life, where beauty was found in the smallest details. Whenever a strong wind blew, the hide would flap and rattle, producing a faint flapping sound, and you could hear the wind seeping through the gaps, bringing in biting cold and the smell of damp earth. That chilling sensation of the incoming draft, a constant reminder of the cold's presence outside, creeping into every corner of the house, touching your skin, making you shiver a little. When night completely fell, the windows were fully sealed, plunging the room into near total darkness, with only the faint glow from the hearth, a tiny, weak but resilient beacon defying the encroaching night. That feeling of profound darkness sharpened all your other senses. You could hear the wind whistling through the window gaps more clearly, the crackling of wood in the hearth, and you could distinctly feel the small warmth radiating from the center of the house, just a few steps away, a warmth you craved in the darkness. This absolute reliance on firelight transformed it from merely a source of illumination into a symbol of life itself, of hope in the thick darkness of winter. Each tiny fire was a fortress against the endless cold outside, a flickering heart amidst the gloomy night, carrying life and protection. The doorways were not much better. They were usually just crude wooden planks, hung by simple hinges made of hide or scrap iron, producing a creaking sound each time they opened or closed, a familiar sound. There were no complex locks, just a horizontal wooden bar inserted from the inside to secure the door, a simple but effective protective measure based on mutual trust within the small community. The creaking of the door whenever it opened or closed was also a familiar sound in the house, like the sigh of the ancient dwelling enduring time. Cold wind could still seep through the gaps around the door, and sometimes tiny snowflakes could even drift inside, leaving small white traces on the earthen floor, like tiny signals of winter trying to intrude. Inspecting and plugging these gaps was a constant task for everyone in the house, a never-ending chore in winter, demanding continuous vigilance. They used anything available to plug the holes. Soft moss gathered from the forest, old frayed rags, dry grass, and sometimes even animal hair collected after livestock shed their coats. Imagine feeling a cold gap in the doorframe with your finger, then stuffing a handful of soft moss into it, feeling the warmth increase immediately. A small, satisfying feeling upon completing the task, knowing you've made the house a little warmer, a little safer. Plugging these gaps wasn't just a trivial chore. It was a survival skill, passed down from generation to generation. They learned from experience and passed it on to their children by practicing together. Imagine small children, with their tiny hands, also assigned the task of finding cracks in the walls and doors, then stuffing them with rags or moss. Every plugged crack was a small victory against the cold, a testament to human perseverance and instinctive wisdom. The house became a work in progress, constantly being improved, a collaboration between humans and the natural materials around them, a symbol of the ceaseless struggle for survival, where everyone contributed a small but vital part. The entire house, from roof to walls and doors, was a continuous effort to create the safest and warmest possible space. Every detail, however small, played a crucial role in the battle against the cold. This was an unceasing fight, demanding patience, skill, and cooperation from every family member. Imagine yourself lying there, listening to the wind howling outside, feeling the warmth from the hearth, and knowing you are safe within this simple but sturdy home. It was a profound sense of peace, a security derived from human effort and community protection, peace you can feel spreading throughout your body, helping you sink deeper into sleep amidst the whistling wind and the crackling fire. The earthen floor and the cold from below's, you felt the solidity of the rough daubed walls, the protection of the thatched roof, and how the cold could still seep through window gaps and doorways. Now let your mind drift a little lower to where you stand, where your feet directly connect with the house. Beneath your feet now is the compacted earthen floor. This isn't a polished wooden floor or cool ceramic tiles. It's raw earth, leveled and pounded firm through countless years of use by the diligent footsteps of people, by the hooves of livestock, and by the passage of time itself. Imagine its surface, hard, cold, and often damp, especially during the winter months, when moisture would continuously rise from the ground, bringing with it a faint, earthy, rustic scent of soil and moss, a characteristic smell of ancient homes. You might feel the bone-chilling cold penetrating through every thread of your simple sandals, if you had them, slowly seeping into the soles of your feet, and then spreading throughout your entire body, a deep, pervasive numbness that makes you shiver softly. This cold isn't sharp like a biting wind or direct snowfall, but it's persistent and insidious, like a cold snake ceaselessly trying to coil into every muscle fiber, every joint, diminishing the warmth the hearth provides. This earthen floor was a significant vulnerability in the house's battle against winter's cold. Dampness and cold from the earth would continuously creep upwards, relentlessly trying to steal the precious warmth from those inside, making it so that even with the biggest fire, you'd still feel a chill from below your feet, a discomfort that couldn't be entirely dispelled, a constant reminder of the cold's presence. To combat this brutal and tenacious cold, the peasants found a simple yet effective solution, passed down from their ancestors. They spread a thick layer of dry straw or reeds across the floor. Imagine each bundle of golden straw, thoroughly dried, carefully harvested from the fields after the crops were gathered, brought from storage into the house, then evenly spread across the entire floor, forming a natural mat, thick and warm. Picture the soft sensation underfoot as you step onto this straw layer, a gentle rustling sound echoing, creating a familiar backdrop to daily life, like walking on dry grass in summer. This straw layer was not just a warm mat, but a crucial insulating barrier, preventing the cold from directly penetrating the body, forming a thin but effective shield between human and the biting cold from the earth below. However, this straw layer wasn't a permanent solution. Over time, it would become compacted under the weight of footsteps and daily activities, growing flat and stiff. Moisture rising from the earth, spilled food, and water splashes from cooking would make it damp, and gradually it would decay, emitting a musty, unpleasant odor. Therefore, periodic straw replacement was a laborious but essential task for hygiene, and to prevent illness, which easily spread in damp conditions. Imagine the entire family together, clearing out the old, compacted, damp straw, and replacing it with fresh, golden bundles, smelling of sun and earth, bringing the scent of the fields indoors. It was manual labor, demanding patience and strength, but it brought immediate comfort, a feeling of cleanliness and dryness. Even if temporary, a small yet valuable improvement for daily life. The fresh straw's gentle fragrance replaced the musty, old smells, bringing a refreshing breeze into the living space, a subtle rebirth in the midst of winter. Despite their efforts to maintain hygiene. You know, sometimes tiny residents lived within this straw layer, especially when it grew old and damp. These were fleas hopping on their skin, lice crawling slowly through their hair, or even tiny mice scurrying about, seeking food and warmth beneath the straw. They learned to accept and coexist peacefully with these uninvited guests, considering them a part of rural life, an inescapable reality. The itchiness from flea bites in the middle of the night was an uncomfortable experience, often interrupting sleep, but they grew accustomed to it, viewing it as a minor challenge of life. Sometimes they used pungent dried herbs like lavender, rosemary, or mint, scattering them among the straw to mask odors, animal smells, and deter insects. Or they might burn a bit of acrid-smelling dry branches to create smoke for pest control, though always very cautiously to avoid fire. A constant lurking danger in a straw-built home. Imagine the feeling of walking barefoot on the biting cold, earthen floor in the early morning. Before the straw layer was spread out, a bone-chilling sensation reaching deep into their bones, yet utterly familiar to them, a stark reminder of winter's harshness, but also a sign that they had survived another long night. You might hear your teeth chattering softly from the cold, and quickly reach for crude wooden clogs or rags to wrap your feet. That feeling, though unpleasant, brought with it gratitude for having a straw layer, however simple, to step upon a small comfort. Amidst the pervasive cold, the interior space of the home was also arranged very simply and functionally. Everything served a single purpose: survival and maximizing warmth. There wasn't much furniture, as every item had to be highly practical. Objects were hung on walls or neatly placed in corners to create movement space for people and livestock. Imagine crude wooden stools, polished smooth by time. A small oak table in the center where the family gathered for meals, and sturdy, simply carved wooden chests used for storing clothes or dry provisions. All were placed as close to the hearth as possible to maximize the precious warmth radiating, forming a small circle of life where everyone could feel each other's warmth. Though the living space was cramped, that was the price for warmth and safety during the cold months. People lived in close proximity, without the concept of privacy we have today. But this very closeness generated physical and emotional warmth and connection. Imagine the feeling of moving in the confined space, sometimes gently bumping into others, but no one complained. Instead, these light touches served as affirmations of presence and bond, a profound understanding. It was an act of quiet concession and mutual empathy, a valuable lesson from a simple life where everyone was an indispensable part of the larger picture of survival. And one person's warmth was another's protection. The steady breathing, the soft snores blended into a symphony of life in the winter night, a comforting sound, gently lulling you into a deep sleep. Life in this earthen home was a lesson in adaptability and gratitude. They learned to cherish every tiny ray of sunlight, every faint wisp of warmth, every act of sharing. It wasn't an easy life, but it forged people into stronger, more resilient beings, teaching them to value the simplest things. As you listen to this story, feel the peace of a simple life, lived in harmony with nature, where everything had its meaning and purpose. And just like that, let your mind continue to drift into deep sleep, enveloped by the images of warmth, safety, and the enduring resilience of the medieval peasants. The hearth, the flickering heart of the home as you felt the chill seeping up from the earthen floor and the clothes. Comforting warmth from the daubed walls and simple thatched roof. Now let your mind drift to the very center of the home. This is where all warmth converges, where every activity revolves. Here, you won't find a grand fireplace with a towering chimney, built with intricate brickwork or stone. Instead, there's just a simple fire pit. It's dug into the earthen floor, right in the middle of the room, and surrounded by carefully arranged large stones or compacted clay blocks. These stones not only prevent the fire from spreading, but also absorb heat, slowly radiating a gentle warmth even after the flames have died down. This is truly the heart of the home, the nucleus around which all life and activity revolve, like tiny planets orbiting a sun, creating a miniature universe of survival. Imagine the firelight flickering and dancing, its warm, golden rays seeping into the darkest corners of the room, painting ethereal shadows on the walls like dancers of life rising in the deep night. This fire isn't merely the sole source of heat during the biting winter nights, when the cold outside can freeze rivers and blizzards howl. It's also the kitchen, where every simple yet nourishing meal is prepared, bringing forth rustic scents of earth and smoke. It's the only source of light after the sun has set, illuminating the tired yet hopeful faces of those who've toiled all day, casting gentle glows on skin etched by time. It's the gathering place for the entire family, where everyone huddles together, seeking solace and connection after a long day battling harsh nature. And sometimes, it's even where small rituals take place, whispered prayers offered, conveying faith in a better future, in the blessings of ancient deities, in a spring that surely must be coming. The smell of burning wood, of food being cooked, and the warmth permeates the entire space, creating a sense of profound peace and familiar comforter, distinct aroma of survival, of home, and of enduring love. A scent you can feel deeply right now. Picture the family gathered around the fire, the mother busily telling a timeless folk tale to her children, her calm, steady voice blending with the gentle crackling of the fire. The father mending clothes with crude needle and thread under the flickering light of the flames, his eyes focused on every stitch, repairing worn fabric to keep his family warm. Children roasting turnips or potatoes if available on the glowing embers, blowing softly to cook them evenly, while warming their small, numb hands and feet. Imagine the simple tools used for cooking over the fire, rough, splotchy earthenware pots placed directly on the embers or hanging suspended from an iron hook stretched across the pit, wooden skewers, simple spoons carved from wood or horn, the gentle bubbling of food in the pot, the soft crackle of wood, the occasional pop of an ember all blending into a symphony of life. A sound of existence, an affirmation that life persists, strong and resilient. What's unique is that most peasant homes had no chimneys. Smoke from the fire pit would linger in the room, forming a hazy mist, seeking escape through small ventilation holes in the roof or cracks in the walls where wind might sneak in. Although it irritated the eyes and lungs, causing stinging eyes, and dry coughs even, persistent mild coughing the smoke had an unexpected benefit. It drove away insects, fleas, and even mice, keeping the house relatively pest-free, a natural form of pest control. Imagine a hazy cloud of smoke swirling in the room, carrying that truly distinctive scent of burning wood. You might feel your eyes sting a bit, and a slight tightness in your chest, but you were enveloped by a warm, protective haze. This was a trade-off they had to accept for survival, an indispensable part of their winter life, a compromise between comfort and sheer existence. Try comparing it to smoking meat. People themselves were smoked throughout the winter, developing a distinct scent and a smoky armor, a hallmark of those who bravely endured the cold season. Smoke also played a crucial role in food preservation. Meat cuts would be hung from the rafters, in the swirling smoke, naturally curing them, helping them last longer during the scarce winter months when fresh food wasn't available. The smell of smoked meat mingled with the scent of burning wood, creating a distinct aroma for the home, a scent of thrift, ingenuity, and sustainability. Dried vegetables and herbs were also hung in the smoke, preventing mold and prolonging their shelf life. Everyone would vie for the spots closest to the hearth, trying to huddle together to absorb every precious bit of warmth. Children, the elderly, or the infirm were often given priority, as they were the most vulnerable to the cold with weaker resistance. Imagine a circle of people lying close together, their backs to the biting wind seeping through gaps, their faces turned towards the firelight. Only one side of their body would be warmed, while the other remained cold and numb. Warmth was a precious commodity, shared strategically and as fairly as possible, sometimes involving small, loving disputes and shared compromises, because they understood that one person's survival was inherently tied to the survival of the whole family. Imagine the feeling when someone stirs, and cold air rushes in for a moment, making you shiver slightly, but then you quickly sink back into the warmth of those beside you. It was a familiar dance of survival during every winter night. Beyond direct heating, the hearth also helped dry, damp clothes. After rain or snow, a necessary task to prevent mold and illness. Thick woolen clothes, after a long day of outdoor labor, were often hung near the hearth to dry, ready for the next day. The musty smell of wet clothes gradually disappeared, replaced by the scent of dry wool and smoke and aroma of readiness. Wet leather boots and soggy gloves were also placed by the fire, slowly drying, softening, and waiting for another day of battle against the cold. The soft dripping sounds from damp clothes onto the earthen floor, then slowly fading as they dried, were also familiar nocturnal sounds, as you listened to the gentle crackling of the fire, the soft sizzle of burning wood, the popping of embers. Feel the safety and peace this fire brought to the medieval peasants. It wasn't just a physical heat source, but a beacon of hope, a center of social life where everyone found comfort, connection, and strength to endure the long, unending winter nights. The fire was life, the fire was love, the fire was survival. Let its light and warmth gently envelop you, and simply drift into deep sleep. The art of firekeeping, the battle of embers and dry wood as you felt the warm glow from the hearth, the very heart of every peasant home. and the shelter provided by the simple waterland daub walls and thatched roof, let your mind now delve into another essential aspect of survival, the art of keeping a continuous fire burning. In medieval times, there were no convenient matches, no gas lighters, no simple electric switches like we have today. Each flame in the house was a precious commodity, an irreplaceable source of life, and allowing it to die out on a biting winter night could mean a true disaster, a direct threat to the lives of the entire family. Before going to bed, as night fell and all activities gradually quieted down, yielding to the stillness and darkness, people would carefully bury the remaining embers under a thick layer of ash. Imagine calloused, rough hands, yet incredibly skillful, gently using a crude wooden shovel, or sometimes just bare moistened hands to carefully cover the glowing red coals with a layer of grey ash. This ash wasn't just simple covering material. It acted as a natural insulator, a thick, downy blanket enveloping the embers, keeping them smouldering all night long, like a sleeping heart, still beating softly, silently in the dense darkness of the house. This was a technique that demanded patience and experience, honed over many bitter winters, through trials and errors. If the ash layer was too thin, the coals would burn out too quickly and perish in a few hours, leaving the house in frigid cold. But if it was too thick, the coals could suffocate, lacking oxygen, and die out completely, leaving utter despair. Balance was key, a skill refined by intuition and keen observation, passed down through spoken words and by demonstration. The next morning, as the first faint rays of dawn weakly filtered through the window cracks, bringing a glimmer of fragile hope for a new day, people would quietly wake up. Picture that scene, a man or woman softly rising in the biting cold air of the early morning, taking gentle, noiseless steps towards the hearth. They would kneel down, gaze at the cold ash pile, and use a small stick to gently poke. A thin wisp of smoke would rise, followed by a faint red glow from the remaining embers, a tiny sign of life, a promise of warmth. They would carefully place dry straw, small bits of tinder, or thin pieces of wood on top of the glowing embers, then slowly blow on them. The gasping breaths from cold and exertion, the faint crackling of kindling as it caught fire, and finally, a small cheer of triumph as the fire ultimately flared back to life, dispelling the darkness and the frigid cold of the night, bringing warmth and hope for a new day. It was a daily ritual, a simple but immensely vital joy. However, things didn't always go so smoothly. Listen to an anecdote about a failed banked fire. One night, a fierce blizzard raged, wind whistling through a crack and completely extinguishing the embers, leaving not a single spark. The entire family would struggle in the freezing darkness, their hands numb and trembling, trying to coax the last spark back to life with flint and steel and dry tinder. The clinking sound of stone hitting steel echoed in the silent night, but the spark just wouldn't catch, or would flicker briefly, and then die out. Frustration and despair could well up in that moment, knowing that with each passing minute the cold was seeping deeper into their bodies, threatening their very lives. But they never gave up. Relighting a fire on a freezing winter night was a real test, demanding perseverance, experience, and sometimes even a bit of luck, a tiny bit of fortune for which they were grateful. The gasping breaths from cold and effort, the faint crackling of kindling, and finally, a small cheer of triumph as the fire ignited, bringing precious life and warmth, a simple yet immense happiness, an affirmation of unyielding human will, maintaining The fire didn't just depend on the skill of banking embers. It also depended on the fuel source, and the search for firewood never ceased, even on days when snow fell heavily, piling up above their knees, covering every path and forest, making movement incredibly difficult. They had to search for fallen dry branches from the woods, peat from damp areas, excess straw from past harvests, or anything that could burn to generate warmth. Every piece of dry wood was as precious as gold, carefully gathered and stacked in large piles outside the house, diligently sheltered from rain or snow to ensure they would burn well. Imagine journeys deep into the snowy woods to find fuel. Sometimes walking for miles, traversing muddy, frozen paths, their feet heavy in the thick snow, each step leaving a clear imprint on the white landscape, the biting cold on their hands as they carried heavy logs, stiff as stone, and the exhaustion of dragging them back home on crude sleds or carrying them on their aching, sometimes numb shoulders. This was dangerous work, as they might encounter hungry wild animals like wolves roaming for food, or get lost in a blizzard, disoriented in the white darkness, unable to see their way back, with only the howling wind and falling snow for company. Stockpiling firewood for winter was one of the most crucial tasks throughout summer and autumn, a meticulous preparation for the battle to come. Each bundle of wood was carefully arranged, symbolizing the warm days ahead, a guarantee for survival. To chop and transport wood, they used simple yet effective tools, crude stone or iron axes forged by local blacksmiths, sharp knives to trim branches and shape logs, and sturdy ropes made from hemp. Imagine a peasant chopping hard logs with an axe, the rhythmic thud echoing in the cold air, each strike steady, powerful, and experienced. Or picture women and children pulling large bundles of straw, the rustling sound of straw on the snow, mingling with soft chatter and laughter, creating a simple yet vibrant scene of labor, a quiet cooperation among family members. This ceaseless labor was an indispensable part of their winter life, a continuous dedication to maintaining warmth and life for the entire family. Inside the small house, warmth from the hearth was strategically distributed, maximizing every precious calorie of heat. Everyone would vie for the spots closest to the hearth, trying to huddle together to absorb maximum warmth. Children, the elderly, or the infirm were often given priority, as they were the most vulnerable to the cold, with weaker resistance, more prone to illness. Imagine a circle of people lying close together, their backs to the biting wind seeping through gaps, their faces turned towards the firelight. Only one side of their body would be warmed, while the other remained cold and numb. Warmth was a precious commodity, shared strategically and as fairly as possible, sometimes involving small, loving disputes and shared compromises, because they understood that one person's survival was also the survival of the entire family. It was an act of quiet concession, a small sacrifice for the common good of the family, a lesson in altruism in harsh conditions. Each night, as darkness fell, the fire in the hearth was more than just a physical heat source. It was a symbol of hope, of survival, a tiny bright spot in the encompassing darkness, a promise for tomorrow. The gentle crackle of wood, the dancing firelight painting shadows on the walls all created a profound sense of safety and peace. And just like that, let your mind sink into sleep, enveloped by the images of the sacred fire, of the resilience and wisdom of the medieval peasants in their endless battle with winter, battle full of hardship but also immense triumph. Warmth from humans, human lasagna and shared connection as You felt the flickering warmth from the hearth, the very heart of every peasant home, and understood the resilience of the fire kept alive through the night. Let your mind now drift to another kind of warmth, a source of heat that never ran dry, the warmth from human beings themselves. On the coldest medieval nights, when the biting frost could freeze everything solid and blizzards howled fiercely outside, the very concept of personal space vanished entirely because survival outweighed all else. Privacy wasn't a concern or a luxury when the ultimate goal was simply to make it through the freezing night, to conserve every precious bit of warmth to sustain life, the entire family, and sometimes even close neighbors, those who might not have enough firewood, or whose own homes were leaking wood, huddled together in the warmest corner of the house, usually near the hearth or in the least drafty spot where gaps had been carefully plugged. They would form a warm, living mass, layering themselves like pancakes or a stack of blankets, a human lasagna of gentle snores and soft murmurs, where each breath was a shared source of heat, and every physical touch transmitted warmth, an invisible bond linking everyone together. Imagine this scene: the elders, often grandparents, being the most vulnerable, would be placed at the very center, enveloped by their stronger, warmer children and grandchildren. Children, with their small bodies prone to losing heat, would be tucked between their parents, shielded by warmth from both sides, like tiny seeds nestled safely in warm soil. The warmest spot, of course, was in the very middle of this human lasagna, where body heat radiated from all sides, creating an incredibly warm pocket of air, enough to ward off the biting cold. If you were on the edge of this lasagna, you would directly face the cold, but the warmth from those within would still be a tremendous comfort, an indispensable source of heat, a silent reminder that you were not alone in the dark night. Imagine the warmth from their steady breaths, the gentle movements of your loved ones around you, a feeling of safety and protection that no words could fully express, a peace radiating from sheer closeness. The rhythmic breathing, the soft snores, and the gentle shifts were all familiar sounds of a night spent in communal sleep, forming a symphony of existence, of living beings battling the long dark night together. Picture the sensation when someone stirs, allowing a sliver of cold air to creep in for a moment, making you shiver slightly. But then you quickly sink back into the warmth of those beside you, as if the cold wave simply passed over and vanished, leaving no trace. This was a quiet act of yielding, a lesson in sharing and deep empathy, an unspoken understanding among people sharing the same plight, the same goal of survival. Small, soft arguments in the middle of the night about someone taking too much space or shifting and making the next person cold were usually quickly resolved with a gentle pat, a soft sigh, or a loving whisper, because they understood that the common goal was to stay warm and survive. Any personal squabbles became tiny and meaningless when faced with sheer survival, with a cold that could claim lives at any moment. The feeling of being cramped wasn't overly bothersome. Instead, it was a comfort, a reminder that you were not alone in the battle against the cold, that there were others sharing the burden with you. The single blanket, if there was one, was also shared by many, turning it into a communal covering, carrying the warmth of everyone, a symbol of unity and family love. Beyond sleeping together to share warmth, medieval peasants also employed another survival strategy in larger homes or on extremely cold nights. It was shift sleeping. Instead of everyone sleeping at once, half the family would stay awake to tend the fire, ensuring the sacred flame never died, and to patch up drafts in the walls or doors, preventing cold wind from entering. Meanwhile, the other half would try to catch some precious hours of sleep, conserving energy for their turn on watch. After a few hours, they would switch shifts. A quiet transfer of duty in the dark night, carried out with order and discipline. There was always someone awake to ensure the fire never died, to check for incoming drafts, and to keep everyone safe from external dangers like wild animals or thieves. The feeling of exhaustion, heavy eyelids from lack of sleep, yet knowing that the survival of everyone depended on them. It was a heavy yet deeply meaningful and noble responsibility, a quiet sacrifice for loved ones. Imagine the drowsiness you'd feel while on watch in the middle of the night, your eyes heavy but unable to fully close, constantly fighting against the urge to sleep. The sounds of the winter night outside, the wind whistling through bare branches, the cracking of tree limbs under the weight of snow, the distant howling of wolves in the deep forest, all listened to with heightened vigilance, every sound carrying a potential meaning, a potential threat that could strike at any moment. The feeling of loneliness while awake alone in the darkness, with only the wind and fire as companions, yet strengthened by the will to survive, by the love for the family. Sleeping soundly, the steady breaths of those sleeping were a constant reminder of the lives you were protecting, a quiet comfort in the still night, an affirmation of your purpose, an unyielding motivation. In that harsh world, human warmth wasn't just a physical condition, not just a dry heat source, but a symbol of love, sharing, and an unbreakable unity. Every touch, every breath, every huddle together strengthened the bond among those who survived as one, creating a strong, cohesive community. It was a lesson in compassion and interdependence, a value that modern life sometimes forgets, where individual convenience often takes precedence. Their lives were a vivid testament to how, when facing adversity, humans can find immense strength in connection and love. Let the images of that warm human lasagna gently lull you to sleep, feeling the safety and human connection embracing you, warming your soul from deep within, bringing a peaceful and profound slumber. Cohabiting with livestock, four-legged friends, and living necessors, you felt the warmth radiating from the very humans huddled together in sleep, a human lasagna full of shared affection. Let your mind now drift to another survival strategy, one just as unique and essential in those harsh medieval winters, the practice of sharing living space with livestock. In that age, when the biting cold could freeze everything solid and blizzards howled outside, peasants didn't just rely on the hearth or the warmth of their fellow humans. They found another precious heat source in their four-legged friends, animals that became an indispensable part of their families and daily lives, bringing warmth and familiar sounds of ongoing existence. This was a critical strategy to combat the cold, especially on extremely frigid nights or during fierce blizzards that made going outside impossible. Cows, goats, pigs, chickens, any creature with body heat was welcomed indoors, usually in a designated area near the entrance or in a specifically designed corner where their waste could be managed with relative ease. Imagine the faint clucking of chickens from a basket hanging from the rafters, the soft snorting of pigs near the hearth, and the warm, heavy breath of a cow standing calmly by the wall, creating misty plumes in the cold air. The smells inside the house might not have been pleasant. You might detect damp earth, straw, and animal odors, but that was a small price to pay for not freezing to death. The warmth from these animals was an essential part of the survival strategy, turning the house into a giant living furnace, a tiny ecosystem of life where humans and animals alike huddled together against the cold, relying on each other to endure. Imagine the potential risks of living with animals: the sudden squawk of a chicken as a mouse scurried by, the grunting of pigs squabbling over a stray piece of food, creating a bit more noise, and sometimes an unexpected nudge from a playful goat's horn, demanding a degree of caution. Yet, these risks were accepted for the enormous benefits the animals provided. Livestock often had their own prime spots within the house cows, typically stayed in central positions or closest to the sleeping area because they were large and radiated significant amounts of heat. Goats and sheep might be allowed closer, while chickens roosted on rafters or in high baskets, safe from other animals. Managing animal waste was also a vital task. It was meticulously collected and composted for fertilizer for the next season's crops, turning waste into a valuable resource, an early example of self-sufficiency and recycling in medieval agriculture. Peasants also developed a special relationship with these animals. Livestock wasn't just a heat source. They were their most valuable possessions, providing milk, meat, wool, and crucial draft power for farming. They were also silent companions in the often lonely rural life, especially during the long winter nights. Imagine a man gently stroking the warm coat of his cow in the dark, feeling the heat radiating from it, or a small child snuggling up against a goat to find warmth, listening to the cow's slow chewing or the pig's steady breathing. All these sounds blended into a symphony of life in the darkness, a comforting backdrop that helped people feel less alone, soothed by the presence of other living beings. Bringing livestock indoors also protected them from the brutal cold outside and from predators like hungry wolves. A healthy animal was a precious asset, and protecting them meant protecting the family's future, ensuring food and labor for the upcoming farming season. This mutual dependence created a strong bond between humans and their animals, a symbiotic relationship in the constant battle against nature's harshness. During the long, drawn-out winter nights, the presence of livestock indoors wasn't just about warmth. It was a vibrant source of life, dispelling the stillness and loneliness. The gentle clucking of chickens as they sought roosting spots, the soft snorts of pigs in their sleep, or the rhythmic breathing of a cow in the darkness were all familiar sounds, a comforting reminder that the house was far from empty. Sometimes, a loyal dog or cat would also find a warm spot beside the livestock, or curl up at a person's feet, adding another layer of warmth and companionship. Imagine yourself lying there, listening to the rain fall on the thatched roof, the gentle crackle of the fire, and mixed in with it, the steady breathing of the Animbusa living symphony happening all around you. The heat radiated by livestock was undeniable. A mature cow, for instance, could generate as much heat as several humans. When multiple animals shared a confined space, they created a natural greenhouse effect, raising the indoor temperature by several degrees. Those few degrees could mean the difference between life and death on a blizzard night. Peasants understood this instinctively from experience, and they knew how to maximize this precious heat source. Simple indoor enclosures, often built from wood or straw, not only kept the animals contained, but also helped prevent their warmth from dissipating too quickly into the larger room. However, sharing a home with livestock also demanded adaptation. From the humans, the smell of dung, the dampness from animal fur could be very strong, especially when the doors had to remain sealed for days due to heavy snow. Peasants had to develop a selective nose, learning to ignore the unpleasant odors and focus instead on the warmth and safety the animals provided. They also had to regularly clean to prevent the spread of diseases, a relentless chore. Particularly in winter, when hygiene became even more challenging due to limited water and freezing temperatures. Despite the challenges, the relationship between medieval peasants and their livestock during winter was a profound example of symbiosis. Animals provided warmth, and humans provided protection. The survival of one depended on the other. It was a vital lesson in interdependence, in human adaptability to a harsh environment, and in finding ingenious solutions from readily available natural resources. As you listen to this story of people and their animal companions, feel the warmth of that enduring connection, the simple yet effective brilliance of their strategy. Let the sounds of life within that home, the quiet breaths of animals, the gentle crackle of the fire, softly lull you into a deep, peaceful sleep. Food and nutrition, the essential energy source for winter, as you felt the warmth radiating from the hearth, from the huddle of human bodies, and even from your four-legged companions sharing the home. Now let your mind turn to another source of heat, one generated deep within the body itself: food. In winter, food wasn't just about satisfying hunger, you know. It was the most crucial energy source for fighting the bone-chilling cold and sustaining life. Every mouthful was cherished, for it not only nourished the body but also provided the fuel to stay warm, to keep the heart beating steadily and the blood flowing. They ate very hearty, calorie-rich meals before going to bed, because that was when the body needed the most energy to brave the cold throughout the long night. Imagine a pot of thick stew bubbling gently over the fire, releasing the warm aroma of turnips, onions, and carrots if available. Typically root vegetables stored from the harvest. The stew was made with legumes, coarse grains, and sometimes a small piece of cured meat, forming a wholesome and filling meal. Or perhaps a bowl of thick oat porridge, cooked with water or milk if available from their livestock, eaten steaming hot, bringing a feeling of warmth from within. Dense, heavy dark bread made from barley or rye was also a staple, providing a slow but steady and enduring release of energy. Imagine the feeling of a full belly after a generous medieval dinner, the warmth from digestion slowly spreading throughout the body, helping them combat the cold from within. This was simple yet incredibly effective medieval thermodynamics, eating ample amounts to generate internal heat, to keep the body from freezing during sleep. The taste of those meals, the saltiness of cured meat, the earthy sweetness of stewed root vegetables, the smoky aroma clinging to the food from being cooked over an open fire, all creating a distinct winter flavor, a taste of survival. The gratitude for every bite, every grain, every root vegetable was profound, for each morsel was a part of life itself, a part of hope for another day. Animal fat, though scarce, was highly valued and utilized thoroughly. It burned slower than proteins or carbohydrates, providing sustained warmth and helping the body maintain energy throughout the long night. Imagine a small piece of rendered pork fat added to the stew, increasing its richness and energy content, a precious commodity. For fighting the bitter cold, this fat would cling to their ribs, providing lasting warmth to ensure a supply of food for the long winter. Food preservation was of utmost importance. They didn't have refrigerators or freezers, so they relied on traditional methods: salting. Meat, pork, beef, or fish were thoroughly rubbed with salt and hung in cool storage areas or in the rafters above the hearth to dry and cure, allowing them to last for months. Imagine solid, cured cuts of meat hanging from the rafters, exuding a distinct salty aroma, ready to be sliced thinly and dropped into a bubbling pot of stew, drying. Vegetables like onions, carrots, or various legumes were dried under the sun and wind during summer, then stored in sacks or wooden chests. Wild fruits, such as apples or pears, were also sliced and dried. Root cellars, storage pits, grains, turnips, and potatoes, if available, were stored in cool, dry earthen cellars or pits, protecting them from spoilage and pests. Every grain, every piece of meat was meticulously preserved, because the fear of food scarcity as winter dragged on was a constant pressure. A poor harvest or a conflict could plunge the entire village into famine. During the winter months, when fresh food was scarce, preparing meals also became a way to pass the time and gather. Imagine the soft clinking of simple knives, the bubbling sound of water boiling over the fire, the gentle chatter of women as they prepared dinner together. Every step was a ritual, a part of the daily struggle for survival. Sometimes, to enhance flavor and nutrition, they would add dried herbs or simple spices if available, like caraway seeds, dried parsley, or a bit of precious honey. These not only made the food more palatable, but also could have medicinal properties, helping to keep the body healthy and ward off illnesses. The warmth of the food, the communal act of eating, and the satisfaction of a full stomach were moments of profound peace amidst the hardship. As you listen to the story of these simple yet powerful meals, feel the warmth radiating from deep within your body, the profound satisfaction that each bite provided. Imagine the grateful eyes as they received their portion, for it wasn't just sustenance, it was hope, a guarantee of a warm night and another day of survival. This deep connection to their food, understanding its origin and the effort required to preserve it, fostered a profound respect for every morsel. And as these images fill your mind, let the gentle hum of the story lull you deeper into a peaceful, restorative sleep. Clothing and hygiene, the body's final layer of protection. As you felt the warmth radiating from the hearth, from the huddle of human bodies, from the shared warmth of livestock, and from those hearty meals. Now let your mind drift towards the most immediate layer of defense for the body against the relentless cold: clothing. In medieval times, fashion was not the top priority, It was all about survival. They didn't concern themselves with trendy styles or fashionable colors. Their only focus was on clothes warm enough to prevent the bone-chilling cold from claiming their lives. They wore everything they owned, layering garment upon garment, creating a living armor against the bitter cold. Imagine a basic undershirt made of coarse linen, not soft or smooth, but effective at wicking away moisture. Then, over that, they would put on several thick woolen tunics, made from sheep's wool, spun and woven by hand. Wool was an excellent insulator, but it was also quite rough and often itchy against the skin. Finally, a heavy cloak, usually made from thick wool or animal hide, was wrapped tightly around their bodies. Imagine the constant, subtle itch of rough wool touching your skin, the cumbersome feeling when moving, but the immense warmth it provides. Simple yet incredibly precious warmth. Footwear was a luxury many peasants couldn't afford. They would often wrap their feet in thick layers of rags or dry grass, then slip them into heavy wooden clogs or crude leather boots. Each layer of fabric, each piece of hide, was a precious defense, transforming them into warm, though sometimes oddly shaped, human onions, bulky and not always graceful, but well protected. Clothes were almost always handmade at home, from spinning wool to weaving fabric on rudimentary looms, and finally cutting and sewing by hand under the hearth's dim light. Every piece of clothing was carefully patched and mended to extend its lifespan, each patch telling a story of resilience, of repeated efforts to withstand the cold. A common, though perhaps not very pleasant, tale was the practice of not washing clothes in winter. Body odor, dirt, and natural oils secreted by the skin, combined with smoke from the hearth, actually created an additional insulating layer, like a natural armor against the biting wind and dampness. The distinctive smell of medieval peasants. In winter, a blend of smoke, sweat, earth, and animal odors was a hallmark of survival, a fragrance of endurance. They didn't care about the scent, as long as they stayed warm and survived the winter. This was a trade-off they accepted naturally, a pragmatic choice for existence. Small items like hats, scarves, and gloves were also incredibly important. Sometimes they could make the difference between life and death. A simple woolen cap, made from sheep's wool, just enough to cover the head and ears, keeping the most vulnerable part of the body warm. A rough shawl tightly wrapped around the neck and mouth, or crude handmade gloves from leather scraps or fabric remnants, carefully patched. These were small treasures, cherished and meticulously preserved. Children were bundled so heavily they resembled plump turnips, waddling awkwardly around the house, their faces serious but their eyes still holding the wide-eyed curiosity of childhood. The goal was to retain as much precious body heat as possible, especially in the head, hands, and feet, the parts most prone to rapid heat loss. Shawls not only provided warmth, but could also be pulled over the face when going outside in blizzards, protecting the skin from frostbite and painful chapping. Ping. Imagine how they made these items, spinning wool from the village sheep, weaving fabric on simple looms set up in their homes, cutting and sewing by hand by the light of the hearth, and meticulously patching with every available scrap of fabric. Their skill and ingenuity in utilizing every piece of material they had was truly remarkable. 2. Avoid inhaling freezing air directly into their lungs. They learned to breathe shallowly, slowly, and primarily through their noses. The warmth from the nasal passages would pre-warm the air before it entered their lungs, helping to reduce the risk of illness. Some even used a piece of cloth wrapped around their face while sleeping to warm their breath, creating a natural mask, though it might be slightly damp in the morning from condensed breath. This was a simple but crucial technique to prevent dangerous respiratory illnesses like pneumonia, which could kill much faster than one might imagine in limited medical conditions and without access to modern medicine. Imagine the sensation of inhaling cold air unexpectedly, a prolonged cough in the middle of the night, and the fear that illness could bring, as even a simple fever could claim a life in winter. Their lives were a testament to how simplicity and practicality could lead to astonishing effectiveness in harsh conditions. Every layer of clothing, every controlled breath, was a part of the daily battle for survival. As you listen to this story, feel the warmth of the blanket you are now wrapped in, and be grateful for the clothes you wear, for they are the result of thousands of years of effort by our ancestors in their relentless fight against the cold. Faith, community, and enduring spirit in the darkness, as you felt the warmth radiating from your layered clothing, from the sustenance of hearty food, and from your controlled breathing. Let your mind now turn to another kind of strength, something invisible yet capable of warming the soul and sustaining human will during those biting winter nights. It is faith and the power of community. In the brutal cold of winter, no one could truly survive alone, you know. Isolation could extinguish the spirit faster than the frost could claim the body. The village transformed into a resilient extended family, where each person was an integral part of a mutual support network, like strong, tenacious threads weaving together a durable fabric, protecting everyone. If a neighbor's chimney showed no smoke rising in the morning, someone would immediately go to check, not out of mere curiosity but out of genuine concern. Imagine a woman hastily pulling on an extra cloak, perhaps grabbing a few small logs, or a shovel to clear snow, then rushing to the neighbor's home to see what was amiss. The community would share glowing coals from their hearths, help weaker families, and even invite them into their own smoky, cramped huts, despite the already limited space. Every small act of help was a connecting thread, a promise for tomorrow, a living testament to a human warmth that surpassed even the physical heat of the fire. They understood that the survival of one person was inextricably linked to the survival of the entire village, an unbroken chain of existence. Imagine examples of this community. Support, working together to gather firewood deep in the snowy forests, sharing scarce tools when needed, exchanging skills to repair leaky roofs or drafty walls, and aiding each other when someone fell ill or suffered an accident. The soft echo of laughter often filled the air as they worked together, dispelling the cold and fatigue, fostering an atmosphere of joy and profound connection. During especially brutal winters, when food supplies began to dwindle, villagers might pool their last remaining provisions to organize communal meals. These were humble meals, yet rich in human connection. Everyone contributed, however little, to ensure that no one went hungry. Children were also taught the importance of helping, carrying wood, sharing embers, learning valuable lessons of altruism. From a very young age, no one was too young or too tired when winter descended, because it was a common struggle for the entire community, a battle they could only win through unity and absolute trust in one another. Imagine the quietness of people eating, the soft whispers of prayers, the sharing of every single morsel of food, the warmth spreading not just from the meal but from the shared human connection, from deep empathy in an uncertain world where nature could be brutal and life often short-lived. Faith was a steadfast anchor for the soul. Before going to bed, families would kneel together, praying for the fire not to die out, for the roof not to collapse, for their feet not to freeze. Saints were invoked to protect against illness and misfortune, against the malevolent spirits of winter. Prayer wasn't a luxury, but an urgent plea for survival, a fragile hope for tomorrow, an invaluable spiritual comfort. These were whispered, heartfelt prayers in the biting cold night, bringing peace to the soul and strengthening the will to survive. Imagine the small family rituals, the blessed objects, and how faith helped them overcome fear and maintain optimism, way to find meaning in a hard life. Stories of gods, of miracles, told by the hearth, nourished hope and resilience. Even during the darkest winter months, there were still small moments of festivity, sparks of hope that warmed the heart. These were religious holidays, gatherings around the hearth to tell stories, sing songs, or play simple folk games. Imagine the soft laughter, the oral traditions of gods, heroes, or mysterious legends, retold over generations. This was how they kept their spirits from freezing, a tiny light in the endless night, reminding them that spring would come and light would return, bringing new life. Imagine folk songs, riddles, humorous anecdotes told to dispel gloom and fear, simple dances to keep bodies and spirits warm. These small gatherings were opportunities for everyone to forget their hardships and find joy in connection, in each other's presence. Despite all these efforts, winter always remained a formidable foe. There were families, entire villages, that did not survive. Illnesses ravaged, hunger and cold tormented. But what is truly remarkable is the normalization of such losses. People accepted that not everyone would see spring. However, it was precisely this resilience and these survival strategies that created an extraordinary legacy. They laid the foundation for future generations, helping humanity overcome the coldest winters, so that today we can enjoy the warmth and conveniences that we sometimes take for granted. Their story is a reminder of human strength when facing adversity, an invaluable lesson in perseverance and willpower. Imagine connecting this legacy to current comforts, how we should cherish what we have and learn from the resilience of our ancestors, the people who paved the way for our lives today. Legacy of resilience and peaceful sleep as you've traveled through time with the medieval peasants, exploring every corner of their earthen homes, feeling the warmth from their hearths, the closeness of human connection, and enduring the harsh challenges they faced. Let your mind now gently settle. Despite all their extraordinary efforts, winter always remained a formidable and unforgiving foe. It was a brutal test, and not everyone could make it through. There were families, entire villages, that simply did not survive the harshest winters. Illnesses ravaged cramped homes, high fevers, and lingering coughs that shook them to their very bones. Hunger and cold tormented weakened bodies, leaving them with no strength left to fight. A hacking cough echoed in the night, heavy, labored breaths, and sometimes a heartbreaking silence indicated that a life had ceased to be. The people of that era didn't have the luxury of prolonged mourning or the time to wallow in sorrow. They accepted that death was an unavoidable part of life's cycle, especially during the brutal winter, and not everyone would witness the warm rays of spring. They could only pray, comfort one another, and continue fighting for those who remained, carrying both grief and renewed determination. The survivors would quietly bury their dead, then resume their struggle for existence, for life had to go on. However, the story of these medieval winter nights isn't just about loss. It was precisely their resilience and their survival strategies that forged an extraordinary legacy, irrefutable proof of the power of human will. They laid the foundation for future generations, helping humanity overcome the coldest winters, so that today we can enjoy the warmth and conveniences that we sometimes take for granted. Every time you switch on a warm heater, pull up a soft electric blanket, or savor a hot meal on a cold winter night, remember the people who struggled so intensely just to obtain those basic necessities. Their story is an invaluable lesson in perseverance, in gratitude, and in an unyielding will to survive. They lived, they toiled, they loved, they fought, and they passed on to us an invaluable legacy of resilience, of human connection, and of an unwavering determination to endure. This legacy isn't confined to history books or ancient museums. It flows in our very blood, in our instinct for survival, in our appreciation for the conveniences we possess. Every warmth in your home, every light you switch on, is the culmination of thousands of years of struggle and evolution, stemming directly from those humble Waterlandorp homes, from those fires carefully preserved across countless generations. Their story is a powerful reminder of human strength when facing adversity, a priceless lesson in endurance and willpower. Connect this legacy to our modern comforts, understand how we should cherish what we have, and learn from the resilience of our ancestors, the people who paved the way for our lives today. It's a profound connection between past and present, between their hardships and our comforts. Now, our journey through the medieval winter nights has come to a close. The tale of the peasant's enduring spirit is complete. It's time for your mind to gently drift away to a place of peace and warmth. The cold of the past has dissipated, leaving only warmth and tranquility to envelop you. Imagine yourself embraced by a gentle warmth, as if protected by the diligent hands of your ancestors, by the flickering fires from 1,000 years ago, by the love and shared spirit of communities that overcame immense hardship. The wind outside your window is now merely a soft lullaby, a harmonious song of nature gently humming. The subtle crackle of the fire is the music of serenity, of existence, of a peaceful slumber slowly descending upon you. Feel your body completely. Relax, every muscle unwinding even deeper, from the top of your head to your toes. Breathe in deeply and exhale slowly, feeling lightness spread throughout your being. Each breath carries relaxation, washing away all tension, all the worries of your long day. Let them dissolve into the air, no longer bothering you. Close your eyes now, feel the softness of your pillow, the comfort of your blanket covering you, like a warm, gentle embrace of peace. Let the images of warm homes, of flickering fires, of human connection, gently guide you into sleep. You are safe, you are protected. All sounds, all thoughts will fade into nothingness, no longer bothering you. Only absolute stillness remains, and deep sleep is calling you, a sleep without dreams, without worries, a truly restorative sleep. Sleep well, let your mind rest, and your body recover, preparing for a new day filled with energy. May you have beautiful and peaceful dreams, embraced by the warmth of history and human connection.